Hey, Sketch.
Hey Tay, I want to ask you, what's your favorite villain in show?
My favorite villain intro would be Gaara from Naruto, the original Naruto, where we first meet Gaara in the tuning exams as this big threat. And then they go to the written exam and they show his smarts. He's covering his eyes floating. He has to see all the test papers. Then they show the group's aptitude by being the fastest time recorded to pass the tuning exams. And then finally, when Gaara finally gets into a fight that we get to see, it's against an already set up character, Rock Lee, who not only defeated Sasuke before the tuning exams started, but then also saved our crew in the Forest of Death. So then when this fight starts, we get to see Gaara full force, not demolish Rock Lee, but basically he put him out of commission. Rock Lee was never supposed to come back, really setting up Gaara as this over powerful Genin villain. What about you?
I will choose Vegeta's and Nappa's introduction in Dragon Ball. You know, we get these two characters. We get one very loud, very outspoken villain who beats most of the cast. I mean, Nappa kills almost all of the Z Warriors, save for Krillin and Gohan. But then he's defeated very... Well, he's killed by Vegeta. Usually Shonen sort of takes after this, where we'll have one very loud, outspoken villain paired with a smaller, little bit more unassuming villain.
Yeah, and then the bigger one who looks stronger tends to be the weaker of the two.
We have a couple of examples of this, Bleach for one, and one here in Ranking of the Kings.
We're talking about today's episode, The Footsteps of War, and it starts with a flashback we both agreed was pretty pointless.
Yeah, we essentially just recap the entire season from Kage's point of view.
Kage looking at Boji, not Kage's whole point of view, but mostly just him watching Boji, actions that he's doing for Boji, and then we get to our current timeline with Miranjo stealing the prisoners from their prison and bringing them to the kingdom. This brings us to the first scene where
King Bo absolutely haymakers Oken, and he gets sent flying into a pillar. After he gets punched and recovers a little bit, he starts crying, he's shaking. He seems visibly terrified of King Bo, up until the point where he decides to charge him again. Then King Bo squares up on him, and right before King Bo is actually able to strike Oken, Oken freezes him in place. Some sort of magic or power that he has. And he cuts his hands, he cuts his Achilles tendons, and he stabs King Bo like a million times in the back. And then he just watches him die. We get a sense that, you know, Oken might not be the most stable of people. He has like mood swings, and he likes to watch people die.
it was a very weird way to set up our villain. Is he scared? Why is he scared? Because he clearly can beat King Bo, hands down. This leads into the next scene, which I thought was very interesting. It gave this is a great world building scene. We get to learn about Ranking of the King's world and how it's more interconnected than we thought. So King Bo, when I first saw him, he obviously looks like the fallen king.
The Mad King?
The Mad King.
King Bo
is the fallen king.
Yeah.
He looks like the Mad King, and we get a quick flashback from the fallen king, King Bo, about his history, and his father is the Mad King that seems to have become mad for some reason, burnt down his whole kingdom, and went to live in the forest. This is one that Boji runs into. The fallen king now is who he is, and he seems to have changed considerably. We don't know what caused this change. Well, we know what caused it, but we don't know how he went from that point to this point. But we can clearly see that this was a great world building moment where the characters that we've met in the past connect back into current characters.
You know, we get a pretty good introduction to Oken and King Bo, and the rest of the criminals we get
very little.
Very little.
Right. Black the brunette and Red the copperhead both have cool names. Red the copperhead says nothing. He just seems like an add-on piece for Black the brunette. But Black the brunette seems to do similar things to King Bo to a lesser degree, but nothing extraordinarily out of this world. Nothing that makes him stand out differently.
All he really does in this episode is take out Miranjo's 2 knights, which we discover are puppets, and that's about it.
And then tell them to take Daida to the prison.
Yeah, that's about it.
That's about it. And even then, he's like, take him to the prison or whatever. Like, he's not becoming the authority figure. He's just telling Red the Copperhead, which seems like his partner, to do something. Not really like a, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
A real commanding position. How about you tell him about the villain I completely forgot was in the episode?
Gigan, the orc, I have no idea what he is. He's there, he's on a leash at the beginning of the episode, or not at the beginning. When we first see him, he's on a leash for some reason. And yeah, me and Tay 100% just forgot about him. He doesn't do anything this episode.
Yeah, he's just gone. For somebody so big, he like incredibly blends in to the background. And he's green. There's
Yeah.
nothing to blend into. The whole
He's
castle is gray.
He's the one non-human in the entire like lineup of criminals, and we couldn't even remember that he was there.
One criminal that we forgot to mention was the bandit, and we saved him because I thought he had the best intro of a character in this scene. Not power-wise, I don't think he's the threatening one or even the scary one, but he definitely is the smartest one.
He's not a powerhouse, but he is more of a tactician.
When the episode ends, he's the one that throws Kingbo away out into the forest to clean up the area. He picks up the crown and puts it on, and he basically wins the who is sitting in this throne seat. But before this, he prevents them from even getting killed in the dungeon where Miranjo's leading them out, because he realizes that all next to them are frozen monsters. If they don't get out and Miranjo dies, what happens next? He also correctly assumes that if he waits for the Kingbo and Oaken fight to end, his assumption was wrong about how it was going to end, but he assumed that if he waits for it to end, he can take advantage.
Yeah, he waits for Kingbo and Oaken to cross swords, which ends in a slaughter. Then the crown's up for grabs, which he actually hands over the crown over to Oaken first, but Oaken seems completely disinterested, so he takes the crown for himself.
He just wins. He takes the safest route. He seems pretty smart. We haven't seen him fight, but I'm pretty sure he's going to be cunning. Near the end of the episode, we see Kingbo twitch his lifeless body, his thumb. It seems pretty obvious what's going to happen back, but what do you think's going to happen?
Okay, so we see Beben at the end of the episode. He seems fully healed, and he comes across seemingly what is Kingbo's corpse, and he tells the snakes to bury him. As the snakes are covering his body to go bury him, we see his hand twitch, so I don't think Kingbo is dead yet.
It seems obvious. It seems like, what was that guy's gun called?
Which gun?
The movie reference where, like, if you see a gun in the scene, it's...
Oh, Chekhov's gun?
Yeah, it seems like a Chekhov gun moment where Kingbo is going to clearly come back. Why would you show the twitch if he's not going to do something? Or if something's not going to happen with him? But this leads to the next scene where we see Miranjo confronting Healing and saying that the reason she's doing this is because she hates this country. Why do you think she hates this country? What's your guess?
It's not entirely clear. She says, I want to bring this entire country to ruin. She brings 5 insanely dangerous criminals with no guidance. She just brings them here and says, you're now free to do whatever you want.
I think there's some hints in the previous episode. Now, my assumption is the country that she's talking about is also the country that skinned her face.
Would it be a different country? Because King Boss was the one who established the current country.
But it's still the same people. I can see why she hates the people in this country for skinning her face and cutting off her hands. Like, I think those have to be related plot points. There's no other real reason that we know of yet for her to hate this country.
No. Although it could just be a plan between Miranjo and King Boss, because the criminals capture King Boss. He doesn't put up a fight at all. Even though we know King Boss is insanely powerful.
Yes, we've seen him take down the chimeras at the other prisoners, Oaken excluded. He just doesn't seem interested in anything. But the other prisoners seem wary of those chimeras that were under Miranjo's control. And he clearly outclassed them easily. And we know that he's the strongest person in this world, excluding now Boji from the Mirror's perspective.
Through this, we get a little bit of an update on Despa, which is Despa's coming on his gallant steed, White King. And would you like to give us a description of White King?
White King is just like Epona, perfect horse. The only difference is it's white, at least in the first picture we get. it looks like Epona, and then the next thing we know is White King becomes extremely overweight.
Probably should have named him Burger King after.
What my question for you is, what is taking Despa so long?
Pretty sure his horse just needs to take a few breaks. Man, doesn't have the stamina it once used to.
That's what I would agree with. And then the other question is, why do you think Despa is coming?
You know, the underworld captain reports to Despa.
そうですか。兄上がそんなことを。それに王権も。わかりました。私も参りましょう。おお、
And Despa says like, oh, is that what my brother said? And Oaken is involved too. So it's probably because Despa's worried about Oaken. He knows Oaken is insanely dangerous.
I don't know if that's the case.
So what do you think?
Because if it was because Oaken is extremely dangerous, he wouldn't need that pile of money to go. But my guess is that there's a deeper connection between Despa, Daisha, and Oaken. Because Daisha, the first thing he goes and checks isn't every cell of every prisoner missing, it's just Oaken's cell. And he senses Oaken missing. And then Despa also says in a weird quizzical manner, Oaken is there, huh? Like, oh, what's so Oaken got out, huh? And then he looks at his money greedily like he always does.
So do you think there's a connection? Do you think Oaken is related to Despa and Daisha, or do you think Despa trained Oaken?
I'm going with it's their family member. I don't know how they're connected, but I'm gonna go with that. That's their family member. Thanks for listening to us. I hope you guys have a good day.
Laters.